Welcome, everybody. This is Diana Gray from UiPath. I'm the Community Marketing Manager for the Americas. And today on the call, I have with me Chris Bolin, who's going to be talking about user interface UI automation with modern design in Studio. And then we also have Tracy Dixon and Paul Ostwich on the fall, who will follow with this session next week for our follow-up and finish this lesson out. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Cool beans. All right, so you all know how much I thoroughly love slides. So we're not going to really we're not going to go through the slides too much today. We'll do some demos. Can you see my slides, Diana?
I cannot see anything yet.
Anybody? Do I need to reshare?
Yeah.
Yep, you see it, or yes, I need to reshare.
Yes, you need to reshare. I do not see it.
I don't see it either.
Let's try again. How about now? Anybody?
Yes, I can see it.
All right. So I have a lot of slides here, and you know me from last time. I'm not going to talk about much of any of them because I kind of hate slides, as everybody knows. We're going to talk about UI automation, user interface automation, and funny thing is, this is kind of where UiPath started. Daniel Dinas, the UiPath CEO, and friends of his had lived in an apartment and invented UiPath, and the breakthrough came when they were able to screen scrape a UI. And way before my time, and Tracy, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, and that's where UiPath began growing. So we're not going to do screen scraping. If Tracy and Paul want to do that next week, we'll do that next week. I'm going to explain how we navigate through a UI, user interface. We're going to focus on a financial aid user interface, and one of my favorite applications, the Nike sneakers drop site, because I am a sneakerhead and collect Nike one of a kinds, limited runs, and collabs, and resell them on StockX and Go for lots of money. So I'm the guy that you hate around Christmas time when you can't find the shoes you want and you have to pay all kinds of hundreds of dollars for them. All right, so we're going to talk about UI interactions. We're going to focus today primarily on targets and anchors. And these slides will be out there for you to use, but I'm actually going to demonstrate targets and anchors. We're going to then focus on the app web recorder, which you can use to record your targets and your selectors, anchors, and targets, and your descriptors on your UI interface if you don't want to play with them. Now, my personal opinion is I don't use the recorder much. In the past, back when the UiPath recorder was more what we call the classic recorder, it only captured the higher level selectors, and I'll explain all those to you. And we still had to go in as developers and kind of refine those. The recorder has been improved in what we call the modern design, which is what we're going to be learning today, and what you'll be primarily focused on the rest of your UiPath training, your robotic process automation training with UiPath. So we'll touch on it. I will tell you, and I will warn you, I'm kind of green on it because I still don't use it. I primarily have grown into the comfort space of refining my own selectors using the UiPath Explorer, and we will touch on that as well today. So I'm not going to go through each of one of these slides. They'll be out there for you to view if you want to view them. We're going to just jump into a demo, and we're going to play around in Studio. So while I get my screen shared again, you all, if you want, can open up your studios. I'm going to grab my studio. Bear with me one moment. And hopefully you all will be able to see it. Well, it's not allowing me to share. Hold on. Let's try this again. Okay. Can you see my studio, Dinah? Anyone?
Yes.
You can. Good.
Yeah.
So I've pre-populated this. We're going to do that on this one, and we'll play around and we'll show some others. But I did this just this morning to kind of demonstrate selectors. So what this is doing is we're going to use a browser, and on your Chrome, for example, I will pull up my Chrome, and I will get to extensions. You should have a UiPath extension. This allows your UiPath to interact with your Chrome. You'll have the same thing on Edge if you prefer using Edge. And similarly, in your UiPath extensions, and someone please tell me if I am not finding where it's at, but we'll dig around. UiPath extensions, you should have Chrome installed if you're using Chrome. If you're not using Chrome, you could have Edge installed if you're using Firefox, things like that. You'll see the extensions here that you can use. You can have a Java extension and other extensions as well. We're going to be using Chrome, so I have the Chrome extension installed on my studio as well. That allows communication between your web browser and your studio instance, and then also your automations when you deploy them. All right. So we're going to go to the financial aid, government financial aid website first. So I've inserted a toggle to make this stop here so I can show you how this opens. So currently I have nothing open on my Chrome. Hold on. I need to turn off my Teams notifications because everybody's pounding on me right now. All right. So as you see, I have nothing open on my Chrome. All right. And I'm hoping we can do this, Diana. Can you see my Google Chrome too,
I
Diana?
can see your Google. Yeah.
And can you see my studio?
Yes.
Okay, good. We may be able to do this because I'm on the wall monitor, so it may get a little hinky here or kludgy in a minute, but we're going to try it. All right. I inserted a breakpoint here, and I did that by right-clicking on it and toggling a breakpoint. That means when I run this in debug, it's going to stop right here. But what we're going to see is how it opened UiPath Chrome and this browser extension. Typically, I will not hard code something in here. I will create a variable. For example, I might create a variable called URL, financial aid, that kind of deal, and put it somewhere over here. Or this may exist also in your configuration file that we talked about last time. But for the purpose of this demo, I just put it here hard code. So let me debug this. And you'll see this change to orange in a minute. Maybe see if I can make this bigger so everybody can see. So this is debug mode. All right, you can see it stopped at this marker. And you can see now also I have the financial aid website open for USA.gov. Everybody see that?
I
Cool.
can see it.
I'm assuming I'm going to close this guy. All right, I'm going to stop debug. And it closed my website. So hold on, let me get back in there. So we can play with the selectors. All right. This is where we were. All right. So what I want to do, what I've decided I want to do now, there's different types of things you can do in a UI. You can click on links. We can click on things like this. We can extract things. And whether you believe it or not, this whole section is actually set up on the web user interface as a data table. We can either click on these individually, or we can extract everything in here into a data table, because these are each hyperlinks. And sometimes you just have to play around with it. And each of these hyperlinks takes you to a different website. So there's different things we can do here. We can extract it to a data table. We can get the URL for those. We can navigate directly to that URL instead of going through this homepage. So we'll talk a little bit about all those. All right. So here I'm going to extract a data table. And we do that in Studio with this guy up here, table extraction. And this guy's going to pop up a little, your studio's going to disappear, and it's going to pop up this little pop-up over here. It's called table extraction. All right, so I'm going to select data to extract right here. And it's going to allow me the ability, as you can see, it allows me the ability to focus on a part of the table or the entire table. Here, I want to take out the entire table, so I can just click on free application for federal student aid. And it's going to say, well, look, you have 5 columns. I have 5 categories, right? And do I want to confirm this? Yes. And I can preview. So it's giving me each of these 5 headers. But wait, I also want the URL for these 5 headers. Hold on, golly. So I can come in here to this little guy here, which allows me to extract the URLs. And I'm going to extract the URL for each of these guys. So now, if I preview, I have each of the headers and each of the URLs. Now I can export this as a CSV file, and I will go ahead and do that. I'm going to just save it right there. I'm going to save it in my, right, we'll just save it right here. Now with that, I can then go into each of these URLs. Once I have it, I can have the address all the way already, and I can put that up into a different activity that takes me there instead of going through this front page. So I'm going to close. I'm going to save this guy and close him. So now let's look at this table over here, and I'm going to show you what we have involved here. All right, this is the metadata extracted from that data table that we extracted from that web page. This is just the metadata. These are the table settings. If you look at the table settings, you can see it picks up the, let's open this up. It picks up the space, and it picks up all of the names down here, in similar to a JSON file. All right. And here's our target. Okay, so this is our selector. Let's open this up. Sorry, my mouse is kind of. And the selector, the main selector, is the main content tag. And then we also have strict selectors, and we have what we call fuzzy selectors. And we're going to show you that screen in here in a moment. And it shows you the Chrome page that we're on, the Chrome exe. We're extracting a data table. It creates the variable already, our extracted data table. We can rename it here if we want to. Something along that effect, or you can make it smaller. However you want to do. We can change its scope. We can change it into the main sequence or anything like that. And then we have, what we have down here is, I'm looking for well, I'll show you that on the click. All right. Now here we have no limit. This is the amount of data that we were able to extract. In UiPath, we have the ability, and I'll show you that on another website, maybe eBay, to go through the different pages without clicking on the next button to go through those pages. But here we have no limit. We're extracting all the data from that page, right? All right. So we've extracted the data table. I have another one here, so we're just going to comment that one out and ignore it. Now let's do a click. Okay, so we're on this page. Okay. And now we want to click on estimate your college costs so that we can take the page to this hyperlink. So we're going to do a click activity, very similar to this. And we're going to indicate on here where we want to click. And here we're going to get the selector information on this screen. So here you have 3 different kinds of selectors that UiPath can pick up. You have a strict selector, you have a fuzzy selector, and you have an anchor selector. Oh, where's my anchor? You have the ability to choose an image, which we'll use on the sneaker site. And here's my window selector. So we're going to go in here, and this is the UI Explorer panel. So let's go into the UI Explorer panel first. And it's going to pull up here. And this is where we play with selectors. All right. Now, I primarily, as a developer, only worry about the selector editor panel here. This panel down here, which explains my selectors. This is what the application, what the automation is seeing on the web page, and these items over here, because these items will change with whatever I choose here. I don't typically play with the property explorer or the visual tree because I don't find a lot of value here. Some other developers may, but I don't. Okay, so let's explain what this does. When we set up a web page, I don't know if any of you are web designers. Some of you may be web designers. I have designed web pages in the past. Web pages are basically grids, kind of like the grid paper we had to use in geometry when we were in middle school. A web page is a series of grids, and each of those grids, an element on that web page is attached to a part of that grid. And so those grids kind of hold the web page, and they give us these selector identifications. Based on that, you can use a CSS selector and anything like that. So when a UI, let's say the government decides that they're going to change their user interface to make it more end user friendly or something like that, especially when you get into a web page like eBay, where your products change often, their placement on that web page can alter, which can fault your automation if you've built it with just the inherent selectors that you originally picked. So this is your high level selector, and these are your smaller ones. All right. So each time you click in one of these guys, it's going to give you a different set of things to do, a different set of things to capture at different levels from your web page. So here it automatically collects your high level one and the most lower level one. Now let's click on this lower level guy. So visible inner text was added by UiPath several years ago. I avoid visible inner text because if they change this to say estimates instead of estimate, then your visible inner text is not going to necessarily find what you're looking for. So I kind of avoid this. And what it's finding here is this guy right here. What does it say? Estimate your college cost. So you can see the visible inner text says here. So you have a parent class, which is this side navigation over here. That's where this is at. You have an inner text, which here again, sometimes if this changes, it's not going to find it. So you want to be careful. You have your CSS selectors, which I typically do not use because they can change dynamically more than anything else. Sometimes you'll have what we call an IDX or an index. And you can use an index if you have a very jumbled web page that is ill-defined. You can use an index as long as you stay, the best practice is to stay with index 1 or index 2. If your index comes back at 634 or something like that, you want to avoid using an index. Let's say nothing over here is very much helpful to us. It's not giving us a lot of good definition that we can stabilize the selector. Sometimes I will go up above and click in this guy here, and it may give me some other things that I can use, all right, or up here. And I can go through and I can click different things by just checking it here and adding it to my navigation down here. So each time you check, it adds to your navigation down here, right? So you're done playing with this. You feel comfortable that you've captured the selector, you've stabilized it, you don't think it's going to change in the near future, then we can validate it again. And if it turns green, that means whatever you've done down here finds this guy, all right? And then we can save. The other thing that we can do let me pull back up my studio, is we can anchor this guy. Maybe. Let me confirm him. Let's go back in here. And let's look at, where's my anchor? It's not appearing for me. So we want to choose an anchor. So let's choose an anchor. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, it doesn't show it to you until you indicate an anchor, which is what the blue is. So the green is your primary element, and then the blue is your anchor, and you can actually have more than one anchor if you need it.
Right. And this is really nifty when you start working with computer vision, which Paul and Tracy are kind of going to demonstrate next week. Computer vision works a little bit differently, but uses anchors. So let's anchor it to something that we know is not necessarily going to change. So let's anchor it to financial aid and loans, because we figured that if they do a side level navigation menu, it's gonna primarily typically usually have this. Let's anchor it to financial aid and loans. Okay. And so now you can see over here, my anchor down here has a strict selector and a fuzzy selector as well. And I can use my UiPath Explorer again to modify my anchor. So we can do, the anchor has financial aid and loans. I could do inner text, has that. My AA name has financial aids and loans, so on and so forth. Again, I'm going to avoid visible inner text, but if I validate that, it's green. That means I found my anchor. I can save that. And it found my anchor. So I have my anchor, I have my primary. So if this kind of dropped down here, it may still find it because it's anchored to this guy. Make sense? I can validate it again, confirm it. And let's hide this guy. And let me take my toggle off so we can then go back and run it from this guy. And I'm going to close my browser. And now if I debug, it should take me not only to the extraction of that data table in a CSV format, but it should also take me and click on that link that we looked at. And since I wasn't doing anything else, it closed it. Let's take us back to where we were. And this is what your computer screen would have shown, estimate your college costs. And you can then use your click activity to click through any of these links to get where you want to go. Now, let's say we had that CSV file. Let's show where that was. It's in Armwood. Am I not finding it because I'm blind? Perhaps. Hold on, guys. I gotta find it now. Let me pull this out here while I dig for it. Bear with me one moment, because I may have lost it. No, I guess I did lose it. Let's run that again and put it to the CSV file again. So I'm going to toggle my breakpoint back. Sorry, welcome to the world of live demos. And we're going to toggle him here. Let's see where we're putting. It's not going to find it because I'm on the wrong page. Export as CSV. Let me save it. We'll just save it in the miscellaneous file. And that's the way I can show it. So bear with me. There it is. Okay, here's the CSV. Can you all see my CSV, Diane?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to just go here instead of going, or college cost instead of going to where I want. So let's put in a navigate here. Let's go ahead and Control D this guy's, comment them out. And let's just do a navigate. Navigate browser. Oh, that's not what I want. That's different. It's not the one I want. Bear with me one moment. Let me finish it. Has it changed its name, Paul?
For which one?
So we navigate directly to the website, the URL, instead of.
Yeah, it's go to URL.
Aha.
I think. Yeah, depending on the
There it is.
Yeah.
That changed.
Yeah, usually the searches will still find it under the old name, but sometimes it doesn't.
Well, and I need to close that in a browser window, right? Yeah. And let's say I was just on the home page of Chrome. Let's change this guy. And let's do this guy up in there. And now let's run that. Just do it in debug.
Yeah, I like that you're showing this to go to URL because, I mean, selectors and UI automation and clicking around and things, it works, but you run into issues like you mentioned where, you know, your automation, you know, runs fine for a few months and then one day it won't work because it can't find something changed on the page and it can't find that selector anymore, right?
Right.
And so I love using go to URL instead of clicking things. And I also do a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So maybe at some point in here, you can slip in something about the keyboard shortcuts activity because it's just simpler and more reliable.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with Paul. Anytime you start clicking around a lot to get to where you want to go, you're inviting risk into your automation because, like Paul said, those selectors change, especially when you're working with some larger systems like ERP systems, enterprise accounting systems, customer management systems, and where they have what we call Salesforce, where you have to actually insert some dynamic selectors using variables in your selectors, which becomes a little bit more complicated, but you want to reduce as much risk, especially when you're working with UIs, because unless you own the UI, you have no control over the changes to that UI. And the USA.gov is not going to come to each individual in the United States of America and say, hey, we're changing our web UI to make it more user-friendly. They're just going to change it, right? You won't typically have any forewarning. Now, if your company that you work with uses some web-based SaaS solutions, some web-based solutions that you need to go into pretty regularly. Sometimes when they're coming up with an update or UI change, they'll give you some release notes ahead of that, and you're able to determine what's going to change. You can also use Test Suite within UiPath, which we're not going to talk about here. It's a much more advanced concept where you can actually test your UIs to see if anything has changed that may impact your automation, but we won't go into that here. All right. So any questions on data scraping? And again, all this will be on the recording and in those slides. Any questions on click activities, anything like that? Okay, so let's go in. Let's go back to this guy, to the home page. All right. And let's go in and let's do a type into activity. I'm gonna comment this guy out just by doing a Control D. And that means my automation will ignore that. So let's, again, attach a browser. I'm going to go back into my Chrome. I'm just going to go back into USA.gov. I'm just going to, once I do that, it'll, if you notice, it highlighted the entire screen here, right? So it got the whole US. Now let's type into the search bar. So let's type into, and we're gonna note the search bar. Okay. And let's anchor that guy to this guy. Okay, so you can see over here, I've got two anchors. I've got my target. Okay. And I'm going to type into that. So I'm going to confirm this. Okay. Now I want to type into this website. What was that? Let's go get a renew a passport. So let's just type into their passport. And typically you would have this in a variable instead of hard coding it, just so you're aware. This is very much bad practice, so don't follow me on that bad practice. Now let's look at our elements here. It's giving me Chromium API input mode. So we don't want to do click before typing unless we want to change our input mode. But let's look at some of the things we have here. Display name is type into, which is this. Now in best practices, I'm going to change this to say I'm typing passports into USA.gov. I can do that right here. And that's going to change my display name. Okay. I have my anchors, my targets, and my fuzzy selectors and such as that. But what I want to do is I want to put in, and you can see where I'm typing looking for passports. And do I want an input or output element? Not necessarily. And am I going to do a simulate? Now, let's talk about the differences here. Hardware events are going to tell your bot to use the keyboard, okay? So we want to avoid hardware events as much as possible. Some systems, it's difficult to avoid using hardware events, but we want to avoid using hardware events as much as possible. Simulate means that the bot, your automation, it's going to type in that word passports. You're not going to see it type in the word passport. It's going to simulate typing into that. Okay. And send Windows messages.
Well, to be a little more specific, what simulate is doing is it's sending commands to the browser behind the scenes. So you will see the words type in there, but you won't see the mouse and cursor move. And one thing that I want to throw in here about this is what I generally prefer to do is I set this at the use browser level.
Right.
I set the input mode on that activity, and then everything in it I set to same as app browser. That way, if at some point you need to change things, you can just change it at the use browser level.
Right. And then let's talk about Windows messages. Windows messages is going to send what you would key into your keyboard. It's going to send that same Windows message to the application without using the actual hardware event, your keyboard. So it's kind of sending what your keyboard would send to the application using Windows messages. There are some people, in some instances, send Windows message will also try and work with your application's dynamic library. But in some cases, depending on the application, it won't. So typically UiPath is going to say best practice is simulate, or as Paul said, same as app browser, use browser, same as app browser. That way you don't have to change it on every single thing. And then you have a single click. If you need to change this to a double click, if you have to do a double click, you can here. We're going to activate it. Activating works primarily on simulate click. That means that element that you're type into is not active. It's going to try and activate it prior. What else can I say on this? Am I missing anything? Anybody that I should say? No? Okay.
The main thing is that I would point out where you can select which selectors it uses. That little pull down where it says fuzzy computer vision, it's targeting methods. If you go down right there, or go up a little bit. Oh, you just went by it. Go up right there, targeting methods. If you look at that pull down to the right where it says fuzzy computer vision, whatever, yeah. So this allows you, so you don't necessarily, you have to use at least one, right? But you can change it here, like which ones it uses. And then I would also say, it looks like you've got CV turned on, computer vision turned on. Generally, you would not use computer vision in conjunction with the others. Usually you're going to use computer vision because the others don't work.
Right.
But I'll go over that in more detail next week when we do computer vision.
Right. Now let's talk about native text. There will be, when we talk about OCR engines, which maybe we'll be able to get into next week as well, we'll talk about native text and full text and what you get, the difference of what you get back with each of those. All right. All right. So let's run this and see if it works for our passports. Let's cross our fingers. And we are on the right page to start. Yes, we are. And let's cross our fingers because we're doing a live demo. Which seem to get kludgy sometimes. And again, I'm in. Do I have a break in there? No, I don't. Looks like I'm fixing to error out on something because it's not doing what we need it to do. So what is it we're going to error out on? So I could not find the user interface action for this item. So it's not finding something. Okay, so we're not going to go into that for the sake of time. I'll figure this out and kind of give you an update or next week before we start. But it gives you some possible, when you get an error, especially in debug, it's going to give you some possible solutions to the error. It's going to give you some things to try. Somehow it's not recognizing something here that we clicked on. Most likely because of these red. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that this is very normal.
Right.
This is what UI automation is. You know, going step by step through each thing you click and each thing you type, and testing these things to make sure that the selectors work, and adjusting selectors. There's times where sometimes I have to copy and paste the selector into Notepad and edit it manually, you know, to get it to work. You know, UiPath is pretty good at figuring stuff out when you're doing the indicate and the anchors and everything. But having to adjust your selectors is very normal. It's just how it works.
Yeah, and when we work with applications, to reinforce what Paul said, a lot of the time a developer is going to be spending is going to be modifying selectors. Because when you're working with Excel and stuff, if your inputs are always structured the same way, or any other type of things like that, then, and you're working with UIs, most of the time you're spent is going to be spent modifying selectors and going through this step-by-step process. So agree with Paul on that. All right, so let's go in and we're going to divert that and I'll research that and give you an update next week. Let's go in and find the sneakers app. I need to make sure I get the right URL for it. We don't want that. There we go. And let's No, we don't want the app. We want sneakers itself. And I believe it's going to be let's just go here. Let me get this guy, the URL, and let's go back home. And you will see what I spend most of my time and money doing. All right, so let's use that browser again. Type in browser. If I could spell it correctly, still not spelled correctly because I'm old. And again, I'm going to go to Chrome. And I'm just going to go here. And I'm going to type in, I'm going to go to this. And let's just say when I get to this, let's just get to that guy's page. And let's see if and we're just going to debug him so it stays open when we get there. And let's click on my Chrome, which is not there. Hold on, let's do this. Let's just toggle that and let's try again. See if we can make him stop. There we go. Damn it. Let's try to do it manually. We know it goes there. I'm trying to be nifty here. All right. So now let's say we want to look for, we've got our sneakers, our apps. I know that's not what we wanted. We wanted sneakers. And that didn't take us there. Let's try again. There we go. The sneakers website. All right. Let's say we want to download everything that's currently in stock or upcoming for sneakers. Okay. All right. So let's go here. And you notice that we can click on pictures here. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do a table extraction because, again, these are all set up as tables. So let's set the data extract. And this time we're going to click on the images. We're going to click on, let's say, confirm. And then I'm going to add the URL for each of these. And then I'm going to add the text. That's not what I want to do. Let's go back and do that again because I clicked on the wrong button. Sorry, guys. That was a Chris fault. Again, I'm going to click on the picture. And if we can, I'm going to confirm this guy. And if we look at the preview, it's got everything undefined because I haven't clicked on anything else. So I'm going to then click on this guy. I'm going to extract the source. Let's just extract the URL. And then I want to click on, I want to change my column. This guy is URL. I can do that by going into settings. I can change this one as going into item, perhaps. And then I can also see if I can get the source. And let's preview that guy. I'm trying to get the item name. So we have the URLs, but we want the item name. So I can click here. Come on. And then I can click here. And it's going to say, it's telling me I need to do a new column. So continue. Let's just say, okay, do a new column. And if you notice, it's going to do that with every shoe in that table. So I can confirm And if I hit preview, I now have the names of the shoes. All right, so we don't need this guy because it's undefined. So I can delete him. And it looks like the source may be the same as the thing. So I'm going to delete this guy, and I'm just playing around with my extract to see what I need and what I don't need. And if I preview it again, I see new column 1. I don't need that, so I can delete that guy. And I can preview, and it tells me the page, the URL, and the name of the shoe. All right, so let's say I want to, let me save and close that. Let's close that, save and close that. But let's say I want to get more. Let's say I want to test it. I've changed it. I want to test it. I can just go in here and say test my extraction. Let's go and extract data wizard. Come on. And I want to do it differently. And I want to extract this piece. Okay. On the columns. Confirm. And preview again. I'm going to get rid of this guy. And I'm going to add in the URL. Preview. So you get an idea, since I wanted it different, I wanted the names in the front and then the URL. I can go back and do it different. Let's close this and see if I can get the price in there. It's not showing me the price, so I'm not gonna be able to do that. All right, so now I have a different data, and I could have exported that to CSV, and I have a different data with different URLs. Instead of going through sneakers, I can simply output the whole thing. And I'll tell you, I have a bot that does this, goes to sneakers, tell me what's upcoming for upcoming releases, and then I will tell my bot which ones I want to enter the draw on so I can purchase it. And my bot does this for me every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays when sneakers changes their releases. Okay. Any questions about how to get databases, data, how to click, how to type into? Anybody, why I spend so much money on shoes? None? Okay.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. One day you're going to have to show us your shoe collection.
Well, I currently have 54 pairs in my bedroom, but they're all for sale if you're interested in buying some, Paul.
Yeah, I like those copper looking ones.
Those aren't released yet. Those release Saturday.
Okay.
But Chris, to your point though, I like what you and Paul were talking about with regards to you have to keep trying, especially for this particular activity here, because that's the first thing I noticed when I first went in, and this I was trying to tell the students, like, it's going to be okay to fail on the first couple tries because this is trial and error. Because you never know where the buttons are going to land.
Yeah, I fail all the time doing this, and it is. And when you fail, and even Dr. Newfield, when we fail on the first run, and we modify, we can go back into it. We can go into that lessons learned and go to the next one and still fail because every UI is different, right?
Correct.
So yes, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the recorder. And again, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'm kind of green on the recorder. So we're just going to get back.
I agree with what you said. I agree with what you said originally on the recorder, Chris. I wouldn't even be able to show anybody how to use it. I don't use it. I've never used it. It's just more reliable for me to just go in step by step, activity by activity, and code my process.
Right.
For a beginner, it may be useful to kind of see how it strings the activities together and things like that. But I guarantee using the recorder, you're still going to have to go back to each activity and make adjustments. It's the recorder's not going to just get it right out of the gate.
Right. I agree. But we'll show it. Okay, these are the upcoming releases. Actually, I just got these Saturday. These are the upcoming releases. And so we're going to use the recorder. And you can find the recorder up here where it says App Web Recorder. Okay, and you're going to have this little pop-up. Your studios can go away. You're going to have this little pop-up. So we're using application browser. And we want to click on an image of a shoe. It's going to do everything that we were just doing. And we want to notify me when this releases. And it's giving me a red on my target, so let's attach it to the SKU number. How's that? Okay. Now, if I can attaching it to the SKU number, I'm going to push my check mark. And I'm going to close that guy because it's just going to notify me in email. And I can go back. And I want to go to something else I may like. Let's look at Diana's.
That's my shoes.
And we want to notify me. So you get the idea. We're going to target this guy once it comes up. That kind of deal. All right. And go back. So the recorder records all the steps for you, right? All the steps that we just did, the recorder's just going in there and individually doing it. And here you can delete steps from the recorder. Here you can it enables the ability to get more than one name. Yeah, save value, shortcut, shift click. This guy, again, I'm kind of greening this, so don't take what I say here. So let's save it and return it to Studio. And you can see that the recorder put everything in there that we just did into your Studio. And now you can go back in here, and like I would also recommend, as Paul did, we can go back in here and we're going to go ahead and modify these selectors to make sure that we've got the right stuff, right? The fuzzy selectors, things like that. But the recorder will help you build the steps that you're doing. But I would suggest once you do the recorder that you go back and modify what you've done, because you can still run into the problems. If I go into sneakers again tomorrow, obviously, if this shoe released today, this shoe is no longer going to be there tomorrow. This shoe, your selector will be wrong for this. And you may have to put in a dynamic selector, which is a variable that says first shoe or wherever it might be, or the name of the shoe, something like that. Questions about the recorder? Again, like Paul says, not many of us use it, but it's a good way to start beginning and using it to look around websites and try and see what the selectors look like and getting your automation built like this, and then going in and seeing what you need to do to change it or to modify it. No questions there? All right. Any questions about anything that we've done up to this point? Anything we've done control flow, we've done worked with Excel files, data tables. We just went over UIs. Now UI is going to be like I said, Paul and Tracy next week are going to talk more about OCR, screen scraping, and computer vision. Computer vision is really remarkable. It's very helpful. Paul's an ace in that. I just went through some basic UI interactions, clicking, doing the text, even though it didn't work. I'll figure that out. And anything else? Paul, can you think of anything else very elementary beginning as it relates to UIs?
I'm trying to think. Back on the topic of like selectors not working and the error that you saw, don't ever think that it's you. It's not you. You didn't do it wrong. You think about all the web pages and apps and things that exist in the world, and they're all different. It's a challenge, you know, and sometimes it takes working with a particular application for a while to get the hang of it. I've done quite a few Salesforce automations. The underlying, like when you're in UI Explorer, you know, looking at the metadata for the page elements, is Salesforce is a mess and it's constantly changing. And so you will learn strategies that work for particular apps and particular web pages and things like that, and get better with them over time. I'm pretty good with Salesforce now. In the beginning, it was a nightmare until you figure out, the little tips and tricks that work. So don't get discouraged when you have trouble getting your UI automation to work. It's normal to have trouble getting it to work.
Yeah, I agree. And a good one to try on, and we do this with other high schools I teach at, is we have them release them into eBay, right? And look for something by typing into what you want to look for, and then going back the next day and seeing if that's changed at all, right? Did something change in that landing page? Did something change in that web page that made my automation not work anymore? And that way you're going to learn quite a bit more about the dynamics of going back and then refining selectors. Now, keep in mind, anything that you have like an eBay or an Amazon or primarily most shopping sites, these are set up in data tables. It doesn't look like it here, but these are actually table formats, right? Had that guy too and sold them for more than that. These are table sites. And underneath these table sites, you have that information we saw earlier. You have the URL for this product. You have the pricing. And in some of these, you even have the seller's information tied to this one picture, right? They're just showing you the picture, and underneath that picture is all that metadata that your automation can pull out that you can't see. So if you really want to play with data tables out of a web page, or playing with selectors using type intos and clicks, I strongly encourage you to go into eBay and do that and play around with eBay or Amazon, because those web pages are so dynamic and change often depending on the algorithms and things that you're interested in, because you can see that mine automatically went to sneakers because I do a lot of sneaker stuff online. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say even social media, Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, they're just constant streams of organized data. And so, those would be good ways to learn that kind of stuff.
Right. So this is eBay. I'm sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen. I thought I was. Like I said, this picture has all that metadata underneath it that you don't necessarily see. So you can withdraw a lot of this information that you see over here just by reading this picture here with the data screen.
Yeah, and when you talk about selectors, if you don't already know it, I would recommend learning at least some basics about HTML programming, because it will help you understand the way things are structured on web pages and what things like properties are. When you're doing a selector, you're identifying a page element by its properties. What is its name? What is its ID? You talked about intertext, which I agree with. Intertext can be dangerous because it changes. So a little bit of basic, just online tutorials for HTML programming would go a long way in understanding the structure of a selector.
Yeah, because I'm going to share my other screen, the slides. Can you see my slides, Diana?
Yes.
If you look at selectors, they have nodes, right? So you have the root node, which is the app you're in. Then you have these other nodes that you are able to modify. So it can get pretty detailed on what you need to modify in your nodes in order to actually get to the field that you want to get to, right? So like here, we may have to change the word details on this particular one. Details may change. It may be dynamic. On one day it may say details, on another day it may say properties. So we may have to put something in here like a variable. So you can do that, and it's a little more complicated. I think we'll get into that a little bit more as you advance further into the program. We'll get into dynamic variables and things like that. We're not going to cover much of those in this first part of your classes. And here also you can see this is kind of like, this is actually what it used to look like. The selectors used to look like. They're different now when we look at them using the modern experience. This is based on the classic experience. But you can see, if you remember on the right side, when we started clicking the boxes on things like AA name and things like that, we were actually changing your selector down here, as you can see over here. So this is your full selector. Your full selector is kind of like the grandfather. All the children sit under the grandfather. This is your, this will not change. This, once you start modifying it, go into different pages and stuff, as long, I mean, not different pages, different areas on a page, this will not change because that's your grandfathered selector. These guys down here will. You can see here where it's grayed out. That means that one, all these other selectors, these children selectors, are tied to this primary grandfather selectors. So this guy is called the full, and all these guys down below it are called partials. This is in the classic version, and you can still play with this in the classic version, but in the modern version, it's a little different now because we have fuzzy, we have anchors, and things like that. All right. Hopefully not everybody's not thoroughly confused, but I will dress up this slide presentation to make it a little more pointed and send it to Diana so she can post it. And of course, the video, the recording will be out there. And as you play with selectors and UIs, again, I strongly encourage jumping to a site like Amazon or eBay and digging around, because you're not going to break the website, but you can dig around and find different things that you can play with on those.
Yeah.
But actually, when you start mastering selectors and working with UIs, working with UIs takes the humdrum out of working with Excel files and data tables. So I enjoy a lot working with UIs.
Yeah, and if you're playing around and you have any questions, you can always go to the forum too, right, Chris? If
Right.
you're having any issues, that's why we have the UiPath Community Forum, is people can help you out.
Right. I think that everybody has at least my contact information. You can always send me a quick email, that kind of stuff as well. And I can kind of point you where to go. That's all I have today, Diana.
All right. You guys did a great job. That was actually very interesting. Now I'm going to be looking for selector shoes.
I don't think
Any
you want
questions, Dr. Newfield?
I don't think you want to get into the habit of being a sneakerhead. It can get expensive.
I won't do that.
Oh no, I could definitely. I know a friend of mine who's a sneakerhead.
Yeah, it's a different world, isn't it, Dr. Newfield?
It is. He has them on display in the back behind whenever he does his Teams calls.
Right?
Does he wear them?
No.
No, you don't wear them. No, you don't wear them.
Oh no, he got that latest pair of Jordans, and that thing is sitting nice, prominently right behind his head on the screen.
You don't want it to be creased at all. You don't want to show any wear on them at all.
Oh boy.
Hey, some people put them in plexiglass cases and things like that.
That's what he did. He put them on the wall with the little case. That's exactly what he did.
But if you think about it, like Nike came out with Freddy Krueger dunks, which dunk is a type of, we call them bricks, dunks, bricks. Those things, if you go onto StockX or Go, those things will right now cost you about 30 grand.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't
It's a
have
very
any
expensive habit.
Yeah, it is an expensive habit. And I thank my son for that because he got me started in it. Now I curse him every time my credit card bill comes through. Trust me.
How fun. Anyway, it's nice to relate to something that everybody can relate to.
Yeah, it's a bad habit. But at least I don't drink or do drugs, right? Or smoke.
That's right. All right. So any questions, Dr. Newfield, from anybody?
No, I think we're in a good place. There was just some explaining just today. That's why I wanted to reiterate the you're gonna fail the first time. You're not gonna get it right. Because I kept reiterating that every time I said, see, he said it again. So
Yep.
no, we're in a good place.
Good, great. And you can always get help either directly or through forum. So we'll see you guys all next week. You guys have a great one.
Y'all too as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.